And so for me, it was a bit of a risk, but I didn't look at it like that, or my own reputation at stake. I looked at it more like for the sake of developing young players. So yeah, I think we can be surprised with some aspects, but then also proud and unsurprised at others.
It's Football Friday, and we're back with another episode of Across the Line. Today is a special one, as we've got a treat, a return for Coach Scott Cooper. Chris, this is a great episode.
We've wanted to get Scott back on the show, but we haven't managed to find the time to get him on. But what more perfect time to get him on the show than directly after what was a fantastic campaign for him with the ADT team. We talk about so many different things with the campaign. He gives us some groundbreaking news on a couple of players who's getting some looks, some amorous advances from abroad, which is a fantastic development for the domestic game. Talks about the performances of the team as a collective and what it means moving forward for the national team program, and then also his disappointment with not being able to secure a second place finish. He talked about that a little bit. So yeah, I mean, Scott was great, really good value, spoke really open and candidly about a number of different subjects. So fantastic to get him on the show today.
As you mentioned, breaking news, a quick review of the season, assessing the competition as well, and everything about what we can look forward to for the Azkals Development Team. Everything in this lovely episode with Scott Cooper. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. If you do, please do subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. And look for us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. Without further ado, we've got Coach Scott Cooper on this Football Friday. In our previous episode, we talked a lot about one of the surprise packages of the Philippines Football League 2020 season, and that team was the Azkals Development Team. They raised a lot of eyebrows and really impressed a lot of the Philippine football community. And today we've got the pleasure of having the man in charge with us on the show. Scott Cooper is back. How are you doing?
Good morning. Yeah, really good. Thank you.
Chris, pleasure to have Scott back on the program. We talked a lot about ADT in our previous episode, and now we get an opportunity to get into the trenches and really dive deep into this.
Yeah, a lot was said, wasn't it, about the performances of ADT in the recent PFL 2020 season. So, who better to discuss all of the inner workings of that campaign than getting Scott on the show. So, yeah, really, really excited to get him on and sort of delve deeper into how he felt the campaign went.
So, obviously, it's been a couple of weeks now, Scott, since the PFL season. How are you feeling now after everything has all the dust has settled, so to speak, from the season?
Feeling good. I mean, there was a lot of hype, probably some unnecessary hype towards the ADT squad. You know, as you guys have mentioned before, if you looked at the squad on paper, there was minimal experience, and there's a lot of hype going towards them, which I tried to protect those players from. As we review what happened, I think for me, it's only fair to review personal, individual performances, because that's what the development's about. It's not necessarily about the team, although the team as a whole did quite well. You know, some personal development. You know, today we have offers for Diano and Gayoso to go to Thailand already. You know, so that's two areas that we already have accomplished, and so we're proud of that. You know, Pintus, our goalkeeper, we loaned out to United. We've got 5 offers for him. You know, Diano brought a lot of offers in, so did Gayoso, and we're not in a place to hold the careers back. That's the whole point of the development squad, is to move them on. Custodio as well got some interest, but he's not ready yet, and so he probably needs a little bit more time under my wing just to kind of cement that new position, which I think everybody could see he did quite well in.
Wow, that's really impressive. I mean, a lot of us were wondering what would happen with a lot of these players who impressed during the competition, and I guess we're hearing it for the first time that these guys already have contracts or offers in place. That's incredible news.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole purpose of the ADT, is to develop them and let them move on to, bigger clubs, in some cases stronger leagues, so that we can map out the careers. So that, that's the whole thing. I think people thought that this is the new Azkals team, which is, it's a little bit naive to think like that. I mean, it's a team of potential Azkals future players, potential and only potential. But to get to that, they need to step up 2 or 3 levels. And so, the offers have come in. We've had interest about over like 9 or 10 players, but some serious interest on 3. And, probably will mean that the squad will get cut down by 5 or 6. And then next year we'll probably go even younger. And that's what we want to keep doing, to the point where, there's a lot of interest in ADT, maybe more interest than I can manage, in terms of domestic and international kids that have got Filipino lineage or passports in some cases. Right now, I'm trying to map out where we go with the program for next year. Probably younger, probably geared towards actual SEA Games eligible players, and keep pushing it forward in terms of looking after the country's best interests, and with that, the players' best interests.
That's fantastic news, Scott. Groundbreaking news. We weren't expecting that. Wasn't something we discussed before we got on the podcast. So that's fantastic news. So with those 2 guys in particular, Diano and Gayoso, like what in your opinion is it that other suitors are looking at those 2 and thinking that potentially they will be able to step up a level or 2?
Well, I mean, with Diano, he backed it up in the SEA Games. He had a really strong SEA Games, if you look back at that, and probably our best defender. And that would include Justin Bass and Armani in that tournament too. I mean, Armani delivered goals at the end in the last game, but in actual defensive capabilities, Diano was probably our most solid performer. So he backed that up in the league by showing he was one of the strongest, if not in the league at centre back. Made one mistake against Kaya. Kenny Daniels punished him for, but then again, I might say that might have been Matthew's mistake too, because we should be putting cover on him when somebody steps up like that. And so, it's I think Diano showed he's got pace. If he's lacking something, it's a little bit of height maybe, but you can argue like the likes of Sergio Ramos in those positions, not the tallest either. So Diano's athletic. What he did do well is he showed composure on the ball and a willingness to attack headers. And so I think he was really strong physically too. And many times he shielded balls out against strong boys. And so I think he looked like that. With Harvey, he showed versatility. He played at the left back, left wing back, inside midfield, and a little bit up top as well. And we kind of moved him around in order to give him more of a more versatile education, because it's still uncertain as to where his best position is. And actually, the 2 Thai teams that contacted us, seen in every game, thought that as an attacking left-sided midfield player might be the place for him, where he's probably spent the last 2.5 games in that position, and it looked like that might be his ticket. He's a proven goal scorer at college, but that doesn't necessarily transfer over to professional levels. Sometimes you can get into bad habits in a lesser standard, and you stand around waiting. And so there's no disguising the fact that Harvey can finish chances. The point is getting into those chances and the development of play within a system. And it looked, like he's learned a lot from being moved around, and maybe in that, it's the attacking role in midfield might suit him. And indeed, that's how the 2 Thai teams saw him too.
It's really interesting that you mentioned those 2 in particular, because Diano was someone that, Jing, you pointed out, didn't you, in the SEA Games? He really caught your eye. Yeah. And I think it was maybe the uncharacteristic mistake that we will describe it as in the Kaya game is obviously what made us think, that was a real shame, because I think up until that point, like you said, he's been making steady progress. So, but it's great news for him that he's attracted suitors from abroad, and I think that would only enhance his development. The other player that you mentioned there is someone who we spoke about on this show last week, because there was, and forever there's been this huge debate with Harvey about where his best position is, and we sort of defended him and you a little bit, saying that we felt that the developmental aspect of that was really, really important. Like, as you said, it doesn't always translate from you score 50 goals in the collegiate game, but can you do that in the professional ranks? And it doesn't always work out in that manner. So the fact that he was able to develop his game by playing in other positions, it sounds as though it's enhanced his development and accelerated it to the point that other clubs have noticed that he could potentially go and play at, the Thai Premier League level, which is phenomenal. And ultimately, this is the sole purpose of the Azkals Development Squad is to get people those moves to enhance their individual development, thus developing the team as a whole. So I'm glad you put that to bed a little bit, because as you're not huge on social media, but that that has been raging for a number of months, even going back to the SEA Games last year, wasn't it, Jing? So you know, I'm really pleased to hear that, because Jing is someone we've talked about a lot, isn't it? About, you know, having that development focus with this squad rather than necessarily looking at it in isolation on just individual games.
I had the opportunity actually to call the Mendiola game against ADT. And when Harvey Gayoso had an opportunity to slot in the goal, I was laughing at my co-commentator, because I knew social media was going to explode, right? Everybody was going to say that, you know, we told you so, Scott, this is where he should be, blah, blah, blah. And exactly that. You come off the commentary booth and you look at social media, and then exactly everybody is talking about Harvey Gayoso should be playing in front. Yeah, you know, you get a lot of these criticisms online, but it's good that probably that you're not there. And looking at some of the naive comments that you will see online, because as you mentioned, these Thai teams that were looking at him, they were impressed with his versatility and his capability to perform, most likely in their mind, as somebody on the left side of midfield. So, I mean, it worked out for him. And fair play to Harvey. There was never anything about coming from him talking about how he wanted to play up front, or that he should be there, or that he wasn't getting his chances. No, he was happy to play wherever you placed him. And clearly he's benefited from that. So fair play to him, fair play to you, and congratulations on hopefully what will be an exciting season for everybody to look forward to in Thailand.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's good news for Harvey. And what I would say about people's opinions online, you know, not that I read it, because I don't get involved in social media. It's just, what for? It's a waste of time. I mean, I don't have social media. Why do I want to tell people what I'm doing today? I don't have there's no point for me in that, you know. If you know me, you know what I'm doing. If you don't, then unlucky, you know. That's how it goes, social media. And so it doesn't really interest me. But what I would say to that is, everybody with an opinion, it's good, because they obviously care about Philippines football. They care about the players. So that's great. But they have to remember, so do I, you know. And the ultimate is that the responsibility falls on me for SEA Games and national team success. So I'm hardly going to hinder myself, am I? You know, and I'd like to think my track record in developing players in England, in Thailand, you know, it's pretty strong. And, you know, Harvey's, he knows the conversations we've been having behind the scenes, and I don't need to come out and say too much. And I welcome the fans, you know, their opinions, and that's great that they think like that. And it's super. But, you know, Harvey had plenty of chances in training sessions to play up front. He's had plenty of moments. We spent a whole 2-day session before the Marlica game with him and Kennedy up front, in working channels, opening space, emptying space, running into channels, creating space. That's more difficult at a professional level. And it clearly didn't work. You know, he went up front against Mendiola, scored a nice glancing header, drifted into pockets. So he's not a high striker, because he always drifts wide and left and right and deeper. And so he'd had to look from fullback. And if you look at like the Dutch example, they play players in numerous positions to get that look and understand their own position a little bit better. And so for us, it was about what is best for Harvey Gayoso. Now, people look at statistics and what thinks that automatically transfers over. It doesn't. You know, you could have a boxer that's 50-0 and fought nobody, steps up and then gets beat straight away as he steps up to a next level. And so, you know, Harvey's a good striker, but he's a striker that looks better when he comes from deep. And so give him the look at the full-back position, the wing-back position. He's learned something new there. Put him a little bit higher into midfield seemed to be like just the ticket, where he's defensively strong. He's adapted that part of his game. He can get forward. We know he can finish chances. I mean, we put him on the penalties because we trust him in that aspect. And so I think it's turned out for the best. But, you know, the fans are always welcome to their opinion. That's fine. And I always think that it's good where there's an opinion, because they obviously care. But they don't see the everyday training sessions. You know, they see a flash glancing headed goal. Did they look at the Marlica game first half? I'd take a look at that for 45 minutes, where we essentially played with 9 men and had to change things at half time to what was a 5-goal difference in the second half, based on a reshuffle. And a reshuffle was Harvey dropping back into a deeper position. So for me, and it's backed up by the international coaches in Thailand as well that have seen it that way, and my own staff too. So, but you know, it's all good for me. It's fine. But if anybody's sending me messages online, they're wasting the time because I just don't read it anyhow. So, but then again, I've always got time to speak to any fan if I see him in the street or if I see him after a game, no problem. But they should just remember, I've got the best interest like they have.
Yeah. I'm really interested also with the Matthew Custodio thing, because he's someone who I've seen since he was quite a young kid. So him and Harvey, both of them I've seen grow up through the youth system here. And Matthew's someone who's always been highly regarded, but he sort of went off the radar for a couple of years. And to see him develop and have such a good campaign this time around in the PFL was a really pleasant surprise. But it sounds like you've got some plans for him. So you said there that you want to develop him in order to maybe get to the same level as some of those other guys, to potentially move him on. What's your sort of plans for him moving forward?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Matthew, he really adapted well to that position. You can look at players across the world that have gone from one end of the pitch to the other end of the pitch, and for him, it really suited him. And he hardly put a foot wrong, in the league, which was astonishing because I expected at least 4 or 5, half a dozen key mistakes from him. But his distribution was good. He was strong. One of the things he was most nervous about is winning headers that were coming down the pitch direct at the timing of his jump. Having to get him from a striker standing under a ball, trying to flick it onto a defender, backing off 2 or 3 yards and getting running jumps. And he got his timing right. His distribution was right. He scored a goal from a set piece, following it in. He's got a nice long throw in. And so he'd got a lot of attributes. And he looked quite polished, but I didn't want to get carried away with that. And so we had a lot of interest in him. And indeed, we could probably drop him into Thailand or Malaysia tomorrow. But I feel like he's somebody that can seriously develop because he's got the height too. He's got pace. He's good with both feet. He's got a nice long diagonal ball. He's a tough boy. Mentally he's quite strong too this year. So, I'm seeing a pathway for him to go right to the top if we get his base education right. And so he probably needs at least another half season or full season. The dilemma for Matthew is that he's not SEA Games eligible. And so it'd be good to see if we can, how quickly we could fast track him for Thailand or somewhere else, or United or Cairo even for the second half of next season, so we can then focus on the younger players coming through the SEA Games. So I don't want to rush him, and I think he's shown the great signs, and I think we just got to keep polishing him up. But certainly showed all the signs of being able to go even, and if that's the steps he made, if in one short season, thrown into a position just based on training sessions and did that well. The question is how far can he go? And I think, Chris, you and I both know that the signs are really good signs there for him to go higher.
Yeah. I also like to take this on to the team element now as well, because one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, which you've already actually answered, was what's your main focus? Because obviously it was a slightly different scenario than how we envisaged this league moving forward, which is that it was a 2-week season and everything was so short and sharp that I was initially thinking you might be looking at them in terms of games in its isolation and then trying to get the best results possible. But seemingly it was still that overarching theme of just trying to develop individual players in order to move them on or to have them ready to play for the SEA Games team or the national team moving forward. So what I wanted to ask you regarding the team was, were you quite surprised with how quickly they were able to adapt to your ideas? Because as you alluded to, and we said this on previous podcasts before, I think that the buzz around the team itself was probably unwarranted because on paper you didn't perhaps have the most talented team at your disposal. But in terms of your results and how you performed in the competition, I mean, the team was exceptional. So were you quite surprised with how quickly they adapted to your ideas?
Not really. You know me well enough. You've been with me in short camps where we've put things together quick, piece on piece, layer on layer, and add things in that way. And so, from my perspective, is we set about try to play a type of football that's modern football, with some high intensity, high velocity football where we get forward and we keep, no matter what the score is, we keep pushing forward. And we, apart from the first game, we came out of the shell a little bit and we started to press, tried to keep the ball moving, rotated formations and positions. And so I always knew we were capable of putting people on the back foot because our intention was to press and let players play at a higher tempo to enhance development too. And so I felt like there were chances where we could concede a goal like the Conchiro Daniels goal. And there were times where we'd we'd actually pin teams back with the non-stop high pressing, which is what we demanded in training sessions throughout. And so the training sessions were really good. So the signs were there in the training sessions. You know, the players went through a series of physical conditioning. So we made sure that we were good enough to get through the 2-3 weeks and close games in close proximity to each other. So I wasn't surprised as much in the boys' capability to handle it. Possibly, I would say I was surprised in our ability to not give many chances away. I mean, if you look at the United games, only a couple of chances, right? You look at the Kaya game, they had probably 3 or 4 decent chances. Then from there on out, you know, there was clean sheet. And with young players, you're always expecting, especially when you're pressing, that there are going to be gaps, mistakes made. And it just wasn't there at the end. And so I think the team, as a continuation throughout the tournament, progressively started to believe more and get better from the pressing. And so we just saw the team evolve into a style of football that was kind of trademarked to ADT's pattern throughout the tournament. But that was us putting defensive, you know, pressing layers on each other, the possession layers, the set pieces, and we kept just adding pieces even throughout the tournament where other teams might have been resting, preparing, playing. We were resting and continue to add things even the day before a game to keep them pushed forward. And so, you know, had I been looking to, you know, think only about the team, we might have done a few things a little bit differently. But, you know, I have to say we're quite proud of the results. And despite what I might say is you still have to teach players how to win football games. You know, if I don't feel they were doing the work in the game, they got pulled off in the first half and they knew that. If I felt they weren't focused or the work rate wasn't there or they wasn't tuned into what we'd been working on, they were coming off. And it wasn't coming off and ignored, coming off explained to so that they could come in the next time. And that's why you saw our second halves and substitutions come in always made an impact because we kept discussing and adding things to each player individually and as a collective team. So, you know, was a surprise a little bit in terms of this. I mean, if you look at the league, I mean, the ADT had the best defensive record, right? 2 goals against in 5 games, and playing the top 2 teams the first 2 games off the bat. It's never going to be easy for a young team. So, I think there was a lot of hype on the team, so there was a little bit of pressure on them. Actually, it's probably more pressure on me because, you know, you put your reputation a little bit on the line. You're the national team coach, and you take a team on paper that could get beaten. And so for me, it was a bit of a risk, but I didn't look at it like that or my own reputation at stake. I looked at it more like for the sake of developing young players. So, yeah, I think we can be surprised with some aspects, but then also proud and unsurprised at others.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned it as adding on layers. I don't know if you listened to the podcast that we did in the review, but that's the exact word that I used to describe how you went about your training sessions. I said, like, every session, you would layer on a new aspect, a new element, which is what enabled us to get information quite quickly in small periods of time, which enabled the players to adapt quite quickly. But one of the things that surprised me was the fact that with the full national team, you're dealing with quite experienced players. You're dealing with guys who've been in that type of environment before and they've played at a high level. I was quite surprised with the level of adaptation, given the fact that these guys haven't had that level of experience or haven't had that exposure. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that was the thing that surprised me. It didn't surprise me that you're able to get there because, as I said, that's your strongest suit, is that ability to continue to layer that information on. And it was very clear and evident watching the games that was a team that had a really clear and crystal understanding of exactly what it was that was expected of them, both individually and as a unit, and then as a full team, as a collective. So yeah, I mean, that beggars for me the question of, if the fixture list was flipped over, had you played those other 3 games, the 3 games that you won at the end, and had the top two teams as it finished, in the latter stages of the competition, do you think you would have potentially have given them even more problems than you did in the opening 2 games?
Well, for sure. I mean, because, you know, with this, as you alluded to there with layers, and it's a good word, with the national team, we coached that in. You were with me in the first couple of camps. We didn't have much time, but, you know, we were strong. We acquitted ourselves well with the national team in the first few games. With this one, that was coaching. This one is coaching and teaching. You have to add so when you're working with young players, you've got to teach and coach. And so it's a kind of a different approach at times. And, I've been with the England setup, I've been with Leicester setup in academy level. So I've been around younger players. And I'm also a graduate of physical education as well. So there's a teaching degree locked into my background as well. And so there's some aspects of that, and so the sessions were deep, short sessions, but deep, and where we expected players to be able to soak up the information and apply it. And that went with a lot of discussions as well, which you wouldn't do so much with the national team players. So we did that, and we kept moving forwards. Would it have been different against Cairo United at the end? Probably, because given more time and adding more layers, it's only good, that team's only going to get stronger and better and more confident. And so, the first game, the boys were probably caught up on not being bullied, because for sure they knew that was going to happen. You could see the reaction in the first game every time they made a foul, the United players running towards them, and so I already warned them about that. You can respect people, but you don't need to be bullied. Probably they were too caught up in standing up for themselves rather than actually playing. And if you look at the last 20 minutes of that game, Pintus made 3 or 4 saves, Pintus, by the way, a player we loaned to them and let play against us, by the way. So, that was us showing, a nice responsibility to the player and being thoughtful to United at the time. You could argue the last 20 minutes he was their best player, save from Carlo Doran, save from Matthew Custodio. There's a few chances there at the end. So, as the tournament went on, the clean sheets were there to speak for themselves. The goals were there, and after that first game, we probably came out of our shell and played higher up the pitch where we wanted to. We can be proud of the first game in the fact that we limited what is an AFC Champions League team to a couple of chances, and Maniot's got himself a red card, so probably assisted us for the last 20 minutes. We were numbers up in that sense, but I think it might have been a little bit different. It might have been a bit closer. Or maybe we'd have come out of our shell and pressed more and got punished more, so we don't know.
Perhaps the thing that interested me with how the season transpired was a lot of people were expecting, the Azkals Development Team to show up similarly to how they did in the SEA Games. But we saw a lineup that had a whole bunch of homegrown players getting integrated into the system. And as you mentioned, the performances were good, right? And I think that was an eye-opener for a lot of us to see that, they could get slotted into a system and perform. So I might be mistaken here, but this will probably be your most exposed to homegrown talent that you've been in your time here in the Philippines, at least in a congested setup where you get to see not only your players, but the people that you're up against as well, all the homegrown talent that was on display in the PFL. So my question to that is, having been exposed to all of that talent, do you feel as if you've been able to create in your mind sort of like a profile of the average Filipino homegrown player? And if you have, how would you describe that?
Yes. I was exposed to all the domestic players from every club and young players coming through. And, I'm proud that there was a lot of homegrown players. And for me, it's I'm a foreign coach, and it's never about where the player was born or what other passport they hold or what language they speak. It doesn't impress me. What impresses me is how they play the game. And you look at the likes of, Troy Limbo came into the team. Marzan came in the team. You saw Rontini on the bench at the end, And so these are players that earned the right to play, Dean Eberle came in at left back, did a nice, strong job. And so for our perspective, Lance Ocampo, Carlo Dorin coming in. And what we saw is, some willingness to apply new skill sets, tactical skill sets, some great technical ability, some good vision. And so I don't think I could wrap a typical Filipino player up in one. I'm hoping to see lots more different types of players come through the ADT program. But as a whole, it gave me a good look at players in the league. I was impressed with some players. I was impressed with Conchiro Daniels. I thought he looked athletic, he looked mobile. We spoke yesterday and the day before a little bit. I liked what he showed us. Not the goal against us; it wasn't about that. It was his other games where I saw his mobility and a level of composure on the ball, and some other players too. I mean, obviously the United players, I know them, most of them quite well, so I didn't learn anything new there. But it was good to see some of the other players that were on the radar and other young players coming through. And even now we're looking at ADT's next season in terms of. I met Dan Palami last night. We were here in the Azkals office in the Alpha Suites talking about potential new young players from 18 and up that could come in January time, and we can take a look at them. And the issue we're going to have at some point is we're not going to be able to hold all the players that we want to hold. And so at some point there's going to have to be a national technical plan so that we don't let these players slip through the cracks. Because if you're looking at like Carlo Dorin, came from nowhere, scored the first goal against Stallions. He put a great performance in against United, playing really with Schrock, which, there's so many levels between those two. But he acquitted himself quite well. And so we just need to make sure that, that we, there's been a massive response to our office from young players and parents and coaches that want to get involved. And so, it's open arms, but it's difficult for me to review every player. And so we're going to have to be backed with a national strategy too, so that we don't let players slip through the cracks, because there's probably hundreds of players out there that we need to look at. And with those hundreds, probably going to be 5 to 10 that can be very good.
So what is the plan then moving forward, Scott? Because I think that's something that's music to my ears. I know Jing and I have discussed that many a time, that we would love to see some sort of pipeline of players coming through the system, so we can identify those players earlier across both domestically and internationally, in order to have that consistency of player coming through on a national team conveyor belt, as it were. So what are the sort of the short-term and the longer-term plans then for this program? And is it going to involve having this sort of replicated at younger age groups potentially?
I think first and foremost with the ADT, we've got to make sure it stays solid and it keeps continuing in the goal that it is in developing young players. So we've got to get the right players through. But that's not going to be enough. And we can't have several ADT teams in the league. It's just not feasible. So there needs to be a national strategy. And I think you and I spoke about this before. For me, I can't sit here and say I know the Philippines inside out, the regions, but it makes more sense to me to start looking at regionalized teams in much the way of a US Olympic development program works out. And so the regionalized teams come together and play each other annually or biannually, so that we can start looking at these players and then figure out what we want to do. Is that going to be a national academy league? That's probably the right way to go. National teams selected from the regional teams, and it's all got to be strategized properly for that to happen. And then the benefit of that is teams like ADT will then be able to pick some of those players up, and other clubs too. And maybe other clubs will surface in the way ADT has. Maybe there's some other clubs may pick up young players and say, we want to take part in that same kind of way. And so ADT is not exclusive. There's nothing stopping anybody else doing something similar. With for example, somebody like yourself, who's a very good coach, experienced in the league, internationally knows his stuff. What would stop somebody like you coaching a team, or somebody else like a Darren Hartman, or other good young coaches around, or some of the college coaches may be entering into the realms of the league too. And so I don't know exactly how it should happen, but I think things have got to be pulled together so that we don't let players slip through. And right now there's a big interest in ADT, so now would be the time to strategize properly. For me, I'm just focusing on the SEA Games for next year, getting the ADT average age down, and trying to, in a sense, have an 8-month preparation for SEA Games with hopefully, 50-60% of what the SEA Games squad would be at ADT to go into that. And there's players like Justin Bass in Thailand. There's Jeff and Paul Tabernas in the J League that are both eligible for SEA Games with passports. So there's some players out there that they're not going to come play for ADT, but if we can get as many SEA Games players into the ADT setup as possible, that gives us a better chance in the SEA Games too at the end of the next year.
Scott, who are the guys on the squad right now who are eligible to play for the SEA Games or in contention for that squad?
Okay, the goalkeeper Quincy is one. There's Christian Rontini is another. Yurick Galantis, Carlo Darren, Lance Ocampo. You know, there's so really that's it. There's 4 or 5 there at the moment now, and we need to probably add another 10 that are eligible, because you know we'll keep some of the overage players like a Limbo, a Marzan, and Custodio, because we feel like we can develop them. So this is not a C Games team, which I heard some people say in commentary. It's not a C Games team. It's a team with some C Games players potentially in it, but we'd like to kind of even that up a little bit. At least 50% of the squad is C Games eligible, and 50% of the squad is players like a Custodio that we feel have got great potential, and we can do our service to him and the country to develop them. So we're trying to kind of level that up in terms of percentages for next season.
Now, there's one thing that I wanted to ask you about the performances that you guys had in the PFL. Now, obviously, the last 3 games you guys won, kept clean sheets. All 3 performances were extremely impressive. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, for fans, it felt as if it was more disappointment in how Stallion, how Mendiola showed up against you guys. And Maharlika, well, perhaps Maharlika a little less so because there weren't much expectations from them. But what did you see against that type of opposition that perhaps allowed you guys to take control of those matches? Because everybody felt that those results should have been the opposite, right? They look at the paper, they see young guys, and they expect the game to transpire in the opposite fashion. What did you see that allowed you guys to take advantage?
Well, I think, you know, it's, if you look at all those games, first half performances, they were all 50-50 games at the first half, you know. And so it gave us an opportunity to readjust in the second half, tinker a little bit with the formation, a few different positions, but keep the pressing and the pressure on. And even if you look at the first 2 games against Kaya and United, our last 20 minutes were probably the strongest in those 2 games. So the writing was on the wall that we were going to be stronger and stronger as the games progressed, because of the fitness levels, because of the application towards the pressing. And so we were able to break teams down. And I think, you know, if you look at, actually, I felt Stallions played some of the best football against us in the first half. They broke out pressing a few times with some nice, intricate play. I think Mendiola stood strong, and it looked like that game could go anywhere. Same for Marlika, you know. And the Mendiola game changed with throwing Galantis up front with the glancing header and then a free kick that opened up that game. You know, but for me, the Mendiola game changed with Troy Limbo and Dean Eberle's contributions in facilitating possession and the delivery from Eberle. The Marlika game, we came with more pace and we pressed them back a little bit more. And against the second half, we probably got players in their better positions. You know, if you look at Gayosa, for example, first half against Marlika, there was nothing being shown up front at all. We essentially were playing with 9 guys because we weren't getting the runs up front and we weren't finding them up front. And so as we changed back to a 4-3-3, we got players probably in their more natural positions going forward. And that seemed to break teams down. And so I think you can say that, you know, on paper, we probably should have lost the game, but it's not played on paper, is it? We all know that. And so from our perspective, it gives us a chance to keep teaching them at half time, to speak to them about how we can change the game, how we can adjust things. And I think in the end, the relentless pressing and the style of football we got to teams. It even got to United and it got to Kaya. I mean, albeit they were protecting 1-0 leads, but it got to them. And that's what we want to do with ADT, give them a modern brand of football that's going to help them develop. And that's the way, you know, I believe football should be played, especially for young players.
The reason why I asked that question is, do you think as if the approach of some of the teams allowed you guys to exploit them? You know, because I feel as if they would have watched this league and they would have learned something from you guys. Like maybe they will try to implement that style of play moving forward. And I guess what I'm leading towards is, how did you feel about the standard of tactics that you were up against, the strategies that you found yourself facing in this season?
Well, it could have been different, Ying, in a regular season, because these are teams with older players, experienced players, but less recovery time. We had the advantage maybe we had as younger players, quicker recoveries, you know, rotating the squad, rotating formations, me all over them all the time. And so they were just constantly on it. And so the other teams, the tactics weren't that bad, because they were, we were losing at halftime to United and Kai. We were drawing with all the other three teams at halftime. So we didn't come in at halftime up in any game. And so from our perspective, you know, it could be that those teams were trying to preserve themselves a little bit, knowing that there's another game in 3 days' time. That's not something I ever thought about. I just demanded the same output of football, high pressing, high velocity all the way through, because we knew we had the squad, and it was quite simple to the players. Either you come off because you're tired, or you come off because you're not applying yourself right, and the players already knew that. And so could teams have done anything different against us? I think it would have been difficult to contain us in the second half because of the relentless pressing that was going to come and the pace that we could inject from the sides and the enthusiasm. So I think it was difficult. I think the standard was pretty good. I mean, United showed, you know, composure, but even them going into a Champions League, you know, they showed at the end that they held on against us, you know. And, we were worrying them with set pieces. Chances were coming at the end. Kaya in a similar way, although I thought Kaya had 2 or 3 good chances to put us away that they missed. But generally, I think we have to say it's difficult because the time frame between each game probably wasn't conducive for, you know, more senior players, shall we say, trying to recover the bodies properly.
Fair enough. Yeah, definitely. I know from inside of Kaya that, you know, 36-year-old legs are not conducive to the type of format that we found ourselves in.
Yeah.
Chris, anything you wanted to throw some coach's way?
Yeah, I mean, the one question I wanted to ask was, we were discussing this on our review session, and I argued that if there was a sort of American-style power ranking, which obviously we're not in that type of setup, but when you have a season of this nature, it's almost, you know, the common phrase of the table doesn't lie is not actually true. And, you know, I argued that, you know, if we were to have a sort of power ranking, I would probably have you at number 2, based on obviously the performances that you gave in the initial 2 games. I mean, you were given a really tough draw, you know, of obviously having the 2 quote unquote favourites in your first 2 games, and you put in stellar performances, and then obviously having the 3 wins on the bounce in the last 3 games put you in a position where obviously you cannot qualify for the Champions League, but put you in that runners-up spot. And I know you're a competitive guy, and then that certainly looks better on a CV, doesn't it, than finishing quote-unquote mid-table. So I know there was a bit of a furore after the Kaya UCFC game, and I remember watching it initially, and I was thinking, for me, I was disappointed with that as a spectacle. I just had it as observing it as a fan, thinking I would love to have seen those 2 teams go at it as, you know, 2 heavyweights, wanting to see who was going to take home the crown. Obviously, as things developed, it didn't work out that way. So when the lineups came out, I as a fan was quite disappointed and didn't really consider the repercussions that it might potentially have for you guys. And ultimately, I think it did sort of muddy that water a little bit, because I think if I was to look at it objectively, and I have to, because obviously I'm involved with Kyra as well, but I would probably argue that potentially you were on paper maybe the second best team in that competition. And, you know, one might argue if UCC had put out their full strength lineup, then things might have been different in terms of how the final standings would have turned out. I don't know what your take is on that, but yeah, I'm sure it probably was quite frustrating for you watching it as an outsider, seeing how things transpired.
Well, from our perspective, you know, our schedule to start off this league wasn't going to be United and Kaya first 2 games in the evening. We actually had United on the 3rd game at 9 o'clock in the morning, which was music to my ears, because I knew we were going to bring the tempo, we were going to run, we were going to press, we'd have settled into the league. So, you know, as you know, things got difficult to get the league off because of some of the positive cases that occurred, and we had to push things back, which the league did a good job of, by the way, and making sure we battened down the hatches and got everything clear. because the number one priority was safety, and they did a good job of that. There's no question about that. But it was disappointing because I was really happy with the schedule when it came out. I thought, well, that suits us a little bit because it takes the pressure off the players. And then we were handed, oh, here's your first 2 games, United and Kai, in the evening, first 2 games, which if you'd have asked me, I'd have wanted them 3rd and 4th at 9 o'clock in the morning because that would have suited us. So it was difficult. So I think we acquitted ourselves really well under a lot of pressure. That first game, Chris, there's so much, I want to say, ridiculous hype. You know, can you imagine anywhere else a Champions League team playing a development team where people are saying that this will be 3-3 or, you know, I think the ADT will win this game? You know, this is some of the things people were saying to me, which I just rolled my eyes. It was just insane because on paper it was a total mismatch. And for the first half, possession-wise, it was. But we just held in there and could have got something at the end. And so I think our team fought hard as a group of players to establish a foothold in the league for the last 3 games and did its job. We did its job honourably to the best of its ability right to the last game. And I think that's what you have to expect from all teams, is to do the job honourably to the last minute of the last game, if that's what's required from you from a league responsibility and integrity perspective. Now, you know, I've been in teams before where league titles won, but we can still affect relegation. And so from my perspective, I call teams and let them know, just to let you know, we are going to be playing our strongest team. And I let our players know, I want more points. You know me, I want more points, I want more goals. And that's where we rolled. So, you know, I understand what United did because they gave players a chance to play that possibly didn't have the chance earlier in the tournament. But the answer to that would be, you know, they could have played when they were winning 10-0 or 7-1 or 6-0 or 7-1 or whatever the scores were they had. Those players could have been brought in. There was 5 subs, so they had that opportunity. When I saw the lineup for the last game, I switched it off. I didn't even watch it. I just switched it off, and because I was speechless a little bit about it. So I switched it off. I understood that it was, you know, it was their prerogative to give players a chance, you know, to do something. And you know, it's not Kaya's fault. Kaya now can rightly say they went through the league without being beaten, which is kudos for them. You know, we can say we've got the best goals against record. You know, it's there. What did I think? Well, I mean, I wouldn't on air tell you exactly what I think, but I think you know me well enough to know exactly what I think of that. I would just say that, you know, when we've got a small league, parity and integrity and responsibility to the league is important. As equally important it is to your own players. So, I mean, I think clubs will look after their own players first, and I get that. If you'd got a Champions League game or a cup final coming, something, you know, there's a good reason to maybe make wholesale changes. And so, yeah, I was disappointed, but I understood what United did because I think players wanted to play, but I felt like it's not something I would have done. For sure, and it's up to them. I don't know if there are repercussions for something like that. I'm not interested in it. Would it have been nice to come second? Of course, it would have. Would we have come second? Well, we don't know. I mean, Kaya might have turned up on the day and been fueled to show United, regardless what their lineup was, strongest team or not. They might have been fueled. So we can say on a power rating, maybe we did deserve to come second, but we didn't. And they're the facts. And so, you know, the fans will have their say, media will have their say. You know, I'll have my say diplomatically like this, but behind closed doors, you know, of course, I'll be saying a totally different thing, which I've said to you know, people in ADT. I'll speak to you, you know, off air myself as well and let you know exactly what I think. But, you know, I think the point is I understood what they did, but I feel like it lacked a little bit of responsibility and league integrity.
I think the key there is what you mentioned is we see it all the time in European leagues and in bigger competitions, but normally it's because there's an FA Cup final. There's a Champions League final. You're protecting your players for that specific reason. We just found out that OJ is going to be moving to Thailand, got himself a deal there. So it made sense that also perhaps he didn't want to endanger his physical you know, his physicality as a player. So that made sense. But everybody else seemed to be hey, you guys are fair game, right? We don't know if we're going to play in 5 months or 6 months. I mean, it's not clear exactly when the next game is. So I know from inside Kai, there was a lot of disappointment as well. And for the neutrals, I think the neutrals were robbed of a match which could have been explosive, which would have been the showcase of the top teams in the league. So I fully understand the disappointment in that one, and sort of the missed opportunity, I suppose, is what's really frustrating there. Is a lot of people were wanting to watch a good match. I mean, some people were not invested in the storylines or who was champion, for that matter. They just wanted to see what Philippine football was about. And unfortunately, in the first half, is this what everybody was talking about? This UCFC side that was incredible. You didn't get a chance to see that in the first half. And sadly, a lot of people might have tuned out because of that, yourself included. So that's the effect that has on the game.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched the game since. I mean, but on the night, I was, I won't say speechless, but I was just, really? Okay. And, it's not something I wanted to watch live. It's something I would watch back later on as the Azkals coach is what I did. So rather watching it as a ADT coach thinking, these young boys might end up getting second in the league, which is something that they could be really proud of. I mean, league position wasn't the be-all and end-all for us, but it would have been nice for them to achieve that. But again, with respect to Kai, you don't know. You don't know what the result would have been in any case. So I think on paper it would have been a United win or draw would have secured second for ADT. I think that's right, isn't it? So from my perspective, I just thought, I'm not going to give this my time tonight, and I'll watch it as an Azkals coach, which I've done since. What did I learn much from it? I learned a few things, but it was just something I watched at a later date, not live. And of course, my phone blew up that night from people wanting reactions, and it's not something I would get involved in. I've got a lot of respect for the United owner and the players there, and just like I said, they got some of their players a game that wanted a game in the league, and so I guess it's they're looking after their own players. Possibly those players are playing for contracts, for next year, want to show what they're capable of. Some of those players may be the breadwinners for the family, and so maybe there's that element to it as well. So I think there's two sides to it. I just think parity should take the should take the upper hand in those situations, particularly where there's no cup final or anything else coming the week after. But that's just my opinion, and it is only an opinion. I'm sure United fans will say, "Hey, we don't have to do that. We want to develop our own players," because they could turn around to me and say, "Hey, coach, you said it wasn't about league positions. You said it's about developing players." That's exactly what we were doing in our last game. Some of our young players. So I think we can't get caught up on it too much, and I think it's for the league to just clarify with United, the reasoning with it, and I'm sure that's what the reason was, and that's it. What I would say is, we loaned Pinthas to them, and we allowed him, as you know well, both you guys, when you loan a player, you don't normally let them play against your club, and we allowed him to play against us, and he did very well in the last 20 minutes, saved a couple of looked like certain goals. So it felt a little bit like we were let down in one perspective. But I won't lose any sleep over that.
One thing that UCFC will be preparing for, or something that they can look forward to, hopefully, if the pandemic allows, is Champions League football next year. Bona fide Champions League football. No longer the qualifiers, the preliminary stages. This is 6 matches, group stage matches against the very best in Asia. Now, we saw some incredible football from them in the 2020 season. Absolutely breathtaking passing and dominant with possession. The big question mark is, how will they do at the Champions League level? You have experience taking a team far in that competition. How do you think they fare at that standard of play?
I think it's going to be very difficult for them. Just being honest, it's the AFC Cup and Champions League, totally different competitions. The levels are so different, and so they've had that experience. What you can say though is that they went to Thailand and got a great result against Port FC, so they showed the capabilities going there, against a team that's probably, if we're honest, 3rd, 4th, or 5th best in Thailand. I think the game if you look at that game, it was 70% possession to Thai Port, 30. So it's a little bit like roles reversed for them in that setting away in Thailand against the third or fourth best team. Now, Thai teams typically struggle massively in the AFC Champions League. Only the Buriram United, my team, Buriram United in 2013, is the last Thai team to even get out of a group. Most Thai teams don't even qualify. And the 2013 team I had in Buriram, we got through the group. It's a hard group too. And we played Bunyad Kaur in the round of 16. We won at home, drew away to go through, and then we lost narrowly to Estegal in the quarterfinals, which was the team ended up with a ranking of 7th. But some of the places in China and Japan and Korea that you have to go to, Uzbekistan or UAE, they're difficult places, really difficult places. And I'd say they've got, they've just lost OJ Porteria. You're telling me, we'll have to see how they develop that squad. I would imagine looking at them, they might need to add some more defensive strength to that team. They lost Kali Demerga the previous year, and so it's great that they'll be in there. I remember, Muntong United trying to emulate Buriram in that sense, and really having a hard time in the Champions League, and that was with strong teams. And so I think it will be a challenge. Let's hope they can do us proud. They can play some decent football. Maybe teams coming here to the Philippines will struggle in the way that the Suzuki Cup teams did, the way that China did, in the World Cup. And it's maybe just trying to make sure that you're really strong at home and you batten down the hatches away from home. But there's no way they're going to be able to go into those environments and play open football. But if you look at the performance last year as well in Japan on a wet pitch, they kept it tight. And so I think that's the key, is just to keep it tight and get your home games won if you can. And so let's hope. I think they'll just need to develop the squad. I'm hoping they can do us proud. It'll be good to see Filipino players in the Champions League. We want to see more of that. So I think it's great that they've got the opportunity to play there, but I think it's a real tall order.
Going to be very interesting to see how those teams, as we mentioned in the previous episode, how they find Rizal Memorial Stadium or wherever the venue is going to be, right? It's not going to be their usual massive world-class facilities that they're traveling to around Japan, Korea, and such.
Well, if we can get the fans out to those games, even neutrals come out. I mean, if you look at the Azkals, the SEA Games, the crowds in the SEA Games were fantastic. Mm. And the fans there, they lifted those SEA Game performances. And if you look at those last performances in the SEA Games, and if we can get that type of crowd in, that type of attendance, it'll all help United. So hopefully we can do that. With the national team games coming back next year, we've got the Asian and World Cup qualifiers, Suzuki Cup. I think it's fair to say those games now will be held in Manila, not in Bacolod. And so hopefully we can keep the attendances rising all the time and keeping the atmosphere great like we saw in the SEA Games. Because with all respects, and with due respects to our fans, we've not had those fans what I've seen previous to that. But the SEA Games was immense. The crowd was fantastic. And it would be great to see that for United games and Azkal games, and indeed league games next season too.
That's awesome. Chris, you know a thing or two about the crowds that the Philippines is capable of putting together. And it was really refreshing, especially for you, to see it during the SEA Games when we covered it and talked about it, that it seems like that life of the Philippine football community was being breathed back into that community. So what are your thoughts on the possibility of, building on this momentum? It seems the SEA Games, and now we've managed against all odds to have a league. And now next year, as Scott mentioned, there's quite a few competitions for us to look forward to.
Yeah, on the crowd thing, I think obviously the SEA Games was unique in a sense that obviously it was the whole country were getting behind all of the activities that were ongoing during that period. So it wasn't just the football; it was all the other sports, and there seemed to be a real sense of national pride around the Philippines as a whole during that SEA Games window. What I hope that this short season that we've just had is, off the back of the SEA Games success, off the back of obviously the tournament that we just had, I hope it does reignite that passion for when we do finally have the games open up, that people will come out in their droves to support the team, as Scott was alluding to, whether it be UCFC, whether it be national team games, whether it be just the league when it finally opens up again. I really do hope that passion, that enthusiasm continues to be fostered within the football community, because it does make a huge difference. I mean, you look at some of the games that I had back in my day, I sound old, but in Bacolod, we were getting 25, 30,000 people. It makes a difference. It makes a huge difference. And when you don't have that home team advantage, it does give and concedes that opportunity to your opponent. So I hope Scott's rallying call is heeded by the fans, because I do think it makes a difference. But I think one of the other things that for me is really important, aside from the fact that we felt as though the community was engaged with football in its entirety as the PFL season was ongoing. I think one of the things that's really ignited my passion is just you talking about all of these opportunities now that these young players are going to get. Because I think since the end of the competition, and it's only been a couple of weeks now, I've had messages from loads of people across the globe saying, I've got this young Filipino kid, he's 15, he's 16, how do we get him in front of Scott? How do we get him in front of the PFF? And because they know that if they get an opportunity to be seen, it's going to open up a number of different doors, not just with the national team, potentially, not just with maybe an underage team for something like the SEA Games, but maybe for them to forge a career here in Southeast Asia or beyond. You never know. So I think that for me is something that is going to be a huge, unique selling point for the Philippine football community, is having players in the pipeline who could prospectively go into the under-23s, you can go into the national team, or can forge their own unique careers for themselves. And that's all we really want, is to forge those pathways and create those opportunities for these players, because, that's the most important thing. Because if you've got individuals that are developing, it's only going to be better for us as a nation, cause more selection problems for Scott and the national team, and continue to enable the national team to evolve and develop and progress, which ultimately is what we all want for the domestic game here.
Yeah, and there's already been some interesting pictures that have been put online. Former owners mingling with, Philippine Football Federation presidents and our commissioner. So there's a possibility that the league is expanded next year, like more teams come back. And when we look back to 2017, there was a lot of talent here in the country, and unfortunately, because of certain situations, we've seen sort of a dispersal of a lot of that talent around Southeast Asia, and now perhaps we're going to get an opportunity with an expansion to get a lot of these guys back. But one thing that you did mention, Scott, that perhaps is music to a lot of young players, is the fact that Mardiano, not just Harvey Gayoso, is being looked at as a player to go abroad and perhaps earn a lucrative contract in Thailand, because Mardiano is a guy who did not necessarily blow anybody away in the UAAP. He was playing for not a very prominent side in the University of the East, and perhaps that's the reason why not a lot of people thought he was that good. But after the SEA Games, after the PFL, the season that he's had, now he's being looked at. So now a lot of homegrown players are thinking, man, if Mardiano can do it, perhaps I could do it as well, right? Is that something that you foresee, like more and more talent hungry to prove themselves at the PFL level, so that they can then move themselves perhaps career-wise into a more lucrative place monetarily?
Definitely. I mean, first and foremost, we'd like the PFL to be bigger. We'd like more teams. We'd like to keep the players here. That ideally would, but we have to be realistic, and we're not there yet. And so players like Diano have got an opportunity to raise his level, going abroad. He's worked so hard. You identified yourself in the SEA Games. He played very well. He was a strong player in the SEA Games. In this league now, you could look at the centre-backs in the league, and I would say Odawara and Mitchell, obviously, two foreign players, probably a little stronger than him in terms of their experience. But Diano showed the capabilities in all areas of centre-back, and I think he's going to go from strength to strength. And so he's somebody that we're going to keep an eye on in terms of his Azkals' future. Okay, we're loaded with centre-backs right now in Azkals from all over the place that are contacting us. But he's got that potential. And Harvey and Diano probably Custodio hot on the tails too will be there too. And so that's the format that we envision for ADT going forwards. And so bringing more players in is what we want to do. And we, rather than funneling them in one at a time into the ADT program, we have to find a system that brings them in the droves so that we can start getting players into the right areas and the right levels, and so that we don't miss anyone, because it's not possible for me to see every player in the ADT program, give them a 2-week trial, and then expect to make a decision, because even then it could be wrong. So we need to make sure that there's a strategy behind the league and the national youth development, and incorporating new players coming in, how we handle that. As it stands right now, we're looking at as many players as we can to come in January to ADT to have a look from both overseas. There's a kid messaged yesterday, sent a video, playing in the German 4th division, 20 years of age, right back, already has a Filipino passport, and just really nice long message to me twice, and the father. And so he's going to come in January to essentially drop what he's doing in Germany to come and trial with ADT, because we can't guarantee anything, And so, and then we want to be looking at the domestic players. There's a lot of domestic coaches saying, this kid's talented, this kid's talented. And so we've got to start trying a method that we get a look at everyone. And it can't just be ADT flying the flag for the entire country to look at all young players coming through. There's got to be more than that. And while the college system obviously works, and I think it's a good system with some good coaches, some good teams, we probably need to find a way where the college and PFL and PFF and the national strategy all link together in somehow and work together so that we get the right product coming through in all levels.
Yeah.
What ideas do you guys have in place right now at this point in time? Obviously, it seems as if it's going to become a bigger problem once the droves become bigger. But initially, as you guys discussed it, what do you guys have in mind as a catch basin for all of this talent that you guys are expecting?
Well, right now I'm just waiting. I'm going to meet the president of PFF, and right now I'm just focusing on ADT for next year to try to make ADT/C games go hand in hand. Like I said, we'll at least try to get 50% of that squad into ADT. Some of the players, obviously, like a Justin Bass or a Tabinas or players like that, we're not going to be able to bring into ADT because they're already at the level we want them at. And so right now, that's going to take a priority in terms of we're trying to do what's best for the country. And the best for the country would be to produce good performances in the C Games. We have an advantage with ADT to bring a lot of those C Games players in and prepare them for 8 months, whereas other national teams might have 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the C Games. We could have an 8-month, essentially, training camp for at least half the C Games squad. So that's the advantage we've got to look at now. In terms of funneling the players, it's hard one to say exactly what's going to happen, but it needs to be regionalized. That is for sure. And there needs to be a program where regional selection committees are working together, and that these regions come together to play with each other. And that somehow goes hand in hand with youth national teams. And from that point on, it could be college selection, it could be PFL team selection, more teams in the league, more academies. So, it's really got to be sat down with a group of professionals to really strategize exactly the right pathway so that we get it right, so that the long-term, future is fruitful for players coming through. Because I'm really convinced with some of the players that we're seeing coming through and how they adapted just at the ADT level. If we can get hold of some of these players from a younger age and expose them to more competition, more regionalized competition, and the league grows, it's going to be better for everyone.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I'm extremely excited to see how everything pans out, especially with the UAP just announcing that they have drawn a line in the sand that they will no longer be allowing any of their new recruits in the UAP to participate in pro leagues. So you can no longer play 2 years at college, dabble in a little bit of a pro game, come back to your college team and play their season. That is no longer on the table. So now they're basically telling players to decide whether you're going to prioritize your college career or your professional career. ADT perhaps provides a little bit of that in between, that gray area where you can get released and play for a guest team at a pro team.
Yeah, well, I think that's fair enough from UP, and the US college system, the NCAA system is not different. You play professional, you're ineligible to play in the NCAA. So in the US, the same system, and I don't think that should be a direct opposite to what ADT are doing. I think that's just a decision, an informed decision that a kid and his family will make what's right for them. If you look at the US college system and the pro system, there's systems in the US where kids forego college to go on to a development program, yet still go to college as a student, but not as a student athlete. Right. And so I think they're all decisions that are going to be well-informed decisions. I think that the answer is that the player gets the absolute truth in terms of the potential he's got. And so he doesn't forego, perhaps a scholarship, perhaps the education he could have or should have got. And at the same time, an ADT program, kids can still continue with their education. So we can't say one's wrong and one's right. I think it's got to be what's right for that particular player based on his education, his level of football, and where the family sees fit for him. And so it's not something I would ever, be opposed to. I actually understand what UP is standing for, and it's no different to the US system. In the NCAA and NAIA in the US college, you can't represent a professional team in any way, shape or form and stay eligible. And so I think it's fine. I think it's just about making sure that the player knows what's in front of him and what the actual truth is in front of him and what the potential is. And of course, sometimes it might be you're not quite sure. Maybe that's the idea where he wants to continue at the college system and then be drafted out of the college system. So I think it all works. I think it's just got to all work together so that we don't have any fraction working against another one.
Yeah, and I guess the silver lining out of all of this is that the players, the young guys, they have options now. That didn't exist before. At least now, as difficult that decision might be down the road once you face it, but at least you have the option, right? Before there wasn't that option.
Absolutely, because not all players either are going to be university candidates, are they? If we're honest, not all footballers across the world are going to have a career, a university education. It's nice if they can. Some players can do it part-time. Some players will do it full-time. Some will be student athletes, some won't. But like you say, there are options, and it's just down to the player to be realistic and the coaches to give them the honest truth in terms of the potential, and the families to make the right decision, because you wouldn't want to have a situation where a kid forgoes a scholarship and comes into a program and he hasn't hit the heights. You didn't think he was going to hit the heights, and he's lost the whole chance of the scholarship or playing college ball, and he's not made it through the development program as well. And so I think they're going to have to take time and patience to make the right decision. And I think the onus is on professional coaches to be honest in that situation, and the college coaches to be honest too at the same time, and the families to take stock and make the decision that's right for them. And from my perspective, I'd always respect anything like that.
Chris, anything else you'd like to discuss?
Scott's just making me want to have a comeback now. He keeps talking about getting really good homegrown talent. I'm a little bit overaged, but I'd love to have another crack at it, be 19 again with some of the opportunities that these young guys are getting now. It's making me a little jealous, a little envious, if I'm being honest. But no, I think it's great. Like, I'm hoping that some of this stuff that we've talked about since the beginning of our podcast, having the pipeline, giving opportunities for these guys, developing players in order for them to move on to create better lives for themselves. These are all things that are now coming to fruition, and the catalyst seemingly at the moment is this ADT program, and it's only been together for such a short period of time. So despite being in its infancy, it seems to have a lot of traction and sparked the interest and the imagination of the football public, which is exactly what we want. And there was some opposition to it beforehand. It was something that we were really championing, but even before we even knew it was being conceived. And to see even already in a short period some of the fruits of the labour of Scott and his guys, I think is incredible. And I'm hoping this is the start of something really beautiful with the domestic game for all the young players coming through the system, to provide real hope for these young kids. Because I'm looking at it for the past 2 or 3 years, it wasn't like it was when I first came, where young kids were really aspiring to want to play in the league because they felt that there was an opportunity for them to, I can have a really good career. I can actually play with the national team. I could play in a domestic league here. It looks great. It's on television. And in the last couple of years, it hasn't been like that. There has been a sort of downward trajectory, specifically with the domestic league. So if we're having these types of success stories, I know it hasn't been completed yet, but it sounds as though guys are getting looks and getting interest. If I was a 14, 15-year-old kid thinking, well, what are my options here? The ADT option or playing the domestic game now seems to be a great option for them. If they're getting looks and the opportunity to progress as a young professional footballer, that's what we want. That's what we want as people who are patrons of the domestic game here. So I think it's really exciting times, Jing. So it's been great to have Scott on and give us this great news, because I'm thinking it's going to infiltrate and it's going to ripple throughout the especially the youth sector here in the Philippines, which is going to make my job a lot easier working in that space. So yeah, really, really happy with that.
I think just to add to that, I think one of the most exciting aspects as well is the approach to the game, right? There wasn't a single boring ADT match this season, right? As Coach alluded to, he is very specific about a high tempo pressing game, high velocity, and it's amazing to see the kids being able to implement that. It takes a lot of confidence to be able to play in that style, and we're seeing it now with a lot of these homegrown kids coming through and really stepping up to the plate, right? So yeah, it's very exciting, especially since you have Mardiano there as the guiding light, and Harvey also showing the way forward for a lot of these young kids. And I'm sure, as you said, there's going to be an influx of a lot of very, very exciting new prospects who are hungry to walk down that same path. So we appreciate the time that you spent with us here, Scott, for taking an hour of your time to break down sort of how things transpired and all the fallout from the last season. And we're very excited to see how things unfold over the next few months. We appreciate you coming on again.
No, I appreciate you guys too. And, it's nice to be able to talk to you guys. And I think you've both got the best interest. You did a good job, by the way, of the broadcasting. And we need to say that about the PFL, the footage and the actual product that they put out was excellent. And I think that was really good news. And it's great to see and great to hear as well. And so, well done to you, and obviously, Chris. That comeback 2 years ago, possibly you were looking like one of the strongest players as a player coach. And I kept nudging you then to play, so you didn't take your chance then. So you're gonna have to hang those boots up and get back to coaching with me again.
Missed the boat, mate. I'm really disappointed with that. Live, on TV as well. He's just bringing me off. It's not even done in a subtle way. I mean, he's just done it in front of everybody. So I appreciate those kind words, though. At least I know that, back in the Suzuki Cup campaign 2 years ago, I was the main man, even though I wasn't in the squad. So I appreciate those kind words. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome, pal.
All right, that's it. If you guys enjoyed this conversation with Scott Cooper, please do subscribe to our show on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. We are on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. Please drop us a line. Tell us what you thought of this episode. We would very much appreciate it. And that is it for us on this Football Friday. We'll catch you next time.